think this is going to be a learning environment for sure, because the questions I have are not necessarily to target you or to even question you on your beliefs, but more to understand the history of how all of this came down, all of Judaism into Christianity from the start. And the only reason why I bring this up is for the fact that I've been reading into Christian history and Jewish history, and a lot of the things that have happened over the years really shed a light on why humans have constructed Judaism, Christianity the way they did. And I feel like you're the best person to ask because you grew up in that environment.
Thank you. All right, I'm looking forward to the questions.
Cool. So I guess lay out the Jewish picture, like from the beginning of time to the end of the Torah into the Tanakh, all the way to where Jewish history kind of ends in the Tanakh, and then we'll pick it up from Rabbinical Judaism and when that propagated and to where we're at now, essentially.
Okay, for sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of perspectives on that timeline of history. There's the scientific perspective, the secular perspective. There's even the Orthodox Jewish perspective, and everyone's trying to read their narrative into the Old Testament narrative. But if we were to just speak about the text itself and what it says about itself, because I think, objectively speaking, that's the best way to read a text. Before you try to apply your other preconceived notions to that text, at least see what it has to say about itself. And in the case of the Bible, especially the Old Testament, it's a very explicit text. It's not trying to mince words or hide anything. This is the claim. Either you buy it or you don't. And one of the things about the Old Testament is that the claim is that if you don't buy these historical documentations, you really don't buy the narrative at all, and you're not part of the revelation. But yeah, it starts off with God creating the world, then goes to Adam and Eve, then goes to Noah, then goes to the Tower of Babel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Joseph goes down to Egypt, brings down Jacob and all the family to Egypt. And then Pharaoh enslaves the Israelites, the Hebrews. And Moses is born. He becomes the savior. God brings him to Egypt to take the Jews out of Egypt. By the way, the term Jew did not exist.
The Hebrews.
Yeah, the Hebrews or the Israelites. Jew comes from Judah and is a much later term.
I've been getting that question a lot. Like, why do you say Jewish, not Jewish?
Yeah. I mean,
like,
again.
All right, fine. You want to play that game? Like the Hebrews.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a semantic issue.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like, how else do you refer to these people? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once the Israelites are taken out of slavery with a divine hand like no other in history, with a complete revelation, the same God that created the world has returned to not destroy this time, but to actually redeem an entire people from slavery. And he walks them through the Red Sea, splits the sea, drowns Pharaoh and his army and all their enemies, and then brings them to Mount Sinai, where they receive the revelation, the Ten Commandments. And we're starting to see a God who is very interactive with the people, an entire nation, for that matter. And Moses is standing at the forefront, but he's serving simply as a servant. This is something that's very important to see about Moses and his leadership, is he's not glorified as some God, as some divine being. He's simply a man who's a servant of God. And God chose him to be the go-between between him and the people.
Oh yeah, I think that's very important. The relationship between Moses and God is simply on a servant to master context, right? And I think that's something that not a lot of people like, right? Mm-hmm. God, you hear this modern saying that God is all loving and caring, and He is our Father in heaven, right? So they create that relationship between themselves and God, the Father who constantly loves and gives grace and mercy. Whereas Moses is serving God, and I think that's something that you and I share with the Bible. We actually orient ourselves around serving God, right, by keeping His commandments, and that's why we always reiterate the same thing: Keep the commandments in the Torah. Keep the commandments in the Torah. He is our master. He created us.
Exactly. No, anyone who actually has a sense of divinity knows that your immediate response should be to worship and to serve. Uh, and it's not an exaggeration to say that you are a slave to God. And you can be a slave to a man, you can be a slave to the devil, but you could be a slave to God, and that would be your highest form of freedom that you could achieve, whether you like it or not. Kind of what you were saying earlier. Do we like all of the commandments? Do we agree with all of them?
No.
No. The whole point is you submit. You submit to the power that is above you, and you have faith that God knows what is best, and God Himself says He is merciful and compassionate, and He wants the best for us. So the Israelites continue to fail to realize this, and they're constantly rebelling against God, constantly angering Him, to the point where He brings them to the promised land, and then they doubt that the creator of all existence can bring them into the land and conquer a few giants, you know? And so God gets very angry and then causes them to wander for 40 years in the desert till the whole generation dies off. They finally do enter, Moses dies. Joshua leads the children of Israel into the land of Israel, and they begin to conquer the land. They take it over, and they dwell in the land. And that's where we enter into the rest of the Old Testament narrative. And this is something that most Jews are just ignorant of, completely ignorant. You talk to the Jews, and all they have to say about their history is a rose-colored glasses vision of a wonderful people who were always great, doing the right thing. It's like, no. What the Jews actually were rebellious, idolaters, murderers, awful things, just awful. Like the history is awful. And there were some small periods where they were good, and that's when the land flourished. That's when there was peace. They had some good judges. They had some good kings. But overall, it was a terrible, terrible situation in the land of Israel. And every time a prophet arose, all he had to say was, why are you not following the Torah? Why are you not following the law? And that has continuously been the downfall of the Jewish people for thousands of years. And a guy just texted me today, and he's like, like we have the perfect tradition of oral Torah from Sinai. It's like, you don't know history. There is no perfect tradition of shit. Okay? We're talking about a people who were so disconnected from God that they didn't even have the written Torah. The king of Israel had to find the written Torah somewhere in the archives of the temple for him to even understand that this was the history that they were supposed to be following. They didn't observe, it says in the book of Nehemiah, they did not observe the Sukkot holiday since the times of Joshua. So from Joshua to Nehemiah, that's from the beginning of the Old Testament, beginning of the Tanakh to the end. They didn't observe the holidays. Okay, like the reality is that the Jewish people have been in a constant failure of obeying God. And as it even says in the Torah, from the day that I knew you, you were rebellious with Yahweh your God. That is what the Israelites have been, a stiff-necked people, and that continues to this day.
Yeah, it's something you mentioned. The only thread that they have to go on whether or not oral tradition is real is their supposed lineage of whose rabbi was who, all the way back to Moses. That's the only piece of proof, if you want to call it proof.
Yeah.
That they have this imaginary lineage all the way back to Moses, and he was the one who transferred the oral law.
Yeah, but also
That's
they're
something you had
assuming
to-
that no one broke from Moses. Like just
Yeah,
because
no, exactly.
you can trace the fact that in historical succession, people who followed Moses doesn't mean that they actually
You
were.
can do that with anything.
Exactly. You could say
Like
that
to Alexander the Great.
exactly. You
find
can just
lineage.
trace everyone
Yeah.
back to the
No,
people that came before them.
Christians have the same idea going on, or Catholics, if you want to call it that. They have this ritual where they put their hands to their next successor, and they have this lineage all the way supposedly back to Jesus and his disciple group. And based off of who has the best track record, do they deem themselves the Orthodox Church? Right. So all the Protestants and Christian groups that are outside of Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox are considered heretics to them because they don't have that. So it's very similar to Judaism in that
No,
capacity.
by the way, the whole resting the hands on the head is a biblical thing where it says like Moses rested his hands on Joshua's head. So the Jews have the same concepts called smicha, right? Which means to support your hands on the head. So they say like a rabbi is only a valid rabbi if he has the smicha from Moses. But again, this just comes to the point in history post Old Testament, where you have the New Testament on the Christian side, and then the Mishnah and the Talmud on the Jewish side. We're just looking at a complete departure from the old narrative, where it's like, look, none of this has worked out, so now we're just going to come up with something totally new. Right? So a new God is born. Right? Unless if you take the Christian version, right? Like it's time for the birth of a new God. The new God is the Son, and his name is Jesus, and he is the Savior. He is the Savior, right? And we're erasing the law, we're erasing the Father, right? And we're now in a situation where a blood sacrifice of a half God, half man character is going to suffice for your salvation in this life somehow.
Not just you, but everybody.
Yeah, everyone.
Even the people who are born.
Yes,
to
for
come.
all who believe in him
Yeah,
shall
exactly.
achieve eternal life. And then on the Jewish side, you have, again, a departure from the law through an overly legalized worldview that's developed by the Pharisees, which Jesus, to his credit, was disputing the Pharisees, where they just turned everything into a question of what do we say, what are our laws, what are our opinions about the law, and they start to develop this body of work that just grows and grows extensively. And we're now 2,000 years after Christ, 2,000 years after the rabbis. It's the same timeline. And while they all claim to be the source of redemption for the world, I've yet to see redemption for the world. In fact, the past 2,000 years have been bloody. They've been terrible. They've been very sad. There's been a lot of tragedy in the Dark Ages, and all of the plagues and wars and terrible genocides and religious wars and secular wars. And it's like, how do people even pretend that these things are our salvation if they're just not? And so the best that I can come up with from reading this narrative, because the Orthodox Jews are going to claim that the rabbis were there with God from the beginning, and the Christians will claim that Jesus was there with God from the beginning, and the secularists will claim that the Bible is a fabricated fairy tale. Right, so I'm not talking about those perspectives. I'm talking about the perspective of the text itself. And religious people, Jews, Christians, Muslims, who claim to follow that tradition, they need to look at the actual foundation of the literature, which is the 5 books of Moses. In the 5th book of the 5 books, it says, "Do not add or subtract to these commandments." That is the complete work. Everything in the Torah feeds back into itself. If you were to read the Torah, it's a complete work, and that's what we need to follow.
And even if there was an oral law, it has to, it does not supersede the written law. Because the written law has been preserved just as much as the oral law has been preserved.
There's bound to be oral conversation surrounding the law that's even encouraged within the laws. You shall speak of these words when you sit in your house, when you walk in the way, when you lay down, when you arise. So it's not that we're not supposed to have conversations about this, but when people deify their conversations above the source of being God, and they say, well, our interpretations are just as valid, if not more valid, than what it says in this book, they've just lost the plot completely.
Yeah. Let's actually back up a little bit, because we talked about the history of the Torah, right, where you follow individuals and this genealogy of people like Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and they seem to be a group, if you were to look at it from an outside historical perspective, right, they seem to be these individuals who are kind of misplaced outside of their nation, and they become wandering Hebrews, right? And they have no home. However, they're a great sum of people, kind of like a gypsy almost. And they go into Egypt, which is not their land, and they're viewed as this outsider group. And they're persecuted against for whatever reasons. So they come, Moses takes them out of Egypt, and they come, Moses dies, and Joshua leads the people into the land of Israel to conquer it, right? So they inherit Israel, and from there, what seems to be the next step?
It's fascinating. The word Hebrew, Ivri, means the one who passes through. So it's actually inherent in the name. And we see these people are called Hebrews all the way from the time of Joseph. Like Pharaoh says, get the Hebrew slave. So it's wild that that's actually what these people were. They were just gypsies, like, people that were wanderers. But God was promising them, like, don't worry. If in the future, you're actually going to own this land. It's going to be yours for eternity. So yeah, that's like the fulfillment of the promise all the way to Abraham is fulfilled with the Israelites entering the land of Israel. And that's something that's repeated even in the narrative when God wants to destroy these people. Moses is like, remember your covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right? So God made a covenant and he fulfilled. But he said, I know you, you're bad, and you're gonna mess this up and you're gonna be exiled. The thing is that, and that's what happened. I mean, the Israelites enter the land, they conquer it, but within a period of 1,000 years, they're out.
And what's happening during those thousands of years, or 1,000 years?
Well, again, a couple of years of peace, a couple of good years, but then as the book of Judges kind of has this ebb and flow, then Israel begun to do evil in the eyes of God.
And that was during a succession of kings.
Well, this is even prior to kings. So this
or judges.
Yeah, judges are immediately right at the beginning of the land. Before there's kings, there isn't this like tight kingdom established. It's saying people were just doing what they like, but they had judges, they had leaders, they even had prophets. But the trend begun already. It's the trend that even started in the desert, and it's really the trend of humanity if you think about it, because this is the Bible starts off with humanity and then goes into a smaller picture of the Israelites, but it's following the same narrative. God gives us the opportunity. He gives us the Garden of Eden. He gives us the paradise. He gives us the promised land, and then we fuck it up. And then we mess it up, and then we just continuously fall through rebelling against Him. So what happened? The Israelites did evil in the eyes of God, and then an enemy arises, and now they're getting attacked, and now they're getting, now they're under attack. Now they got to deal with that, and things only got worse. That's the problem. Is that finally they're like, okay, we want a king. Okay, you want a king? Fine. God allows you to have a king. Then they have Saul. Saul is good, but then he's not good. They have David. David's good, but then like he kind of commits adultery, and we're like okay, he's still David. He's still good. And then we have Solomon, and Solomon's amazing. Solomon, right? But then at the end of his life, Solomon worships other gods, and God actually just takes the kingdom, splits it in half. We now have a civil war. The northern kingdom of Israel. So this all happened so soon too. Like it's right after Solomon. The entire kingdom split in half. The northern kingdom is just complete evil right from the start. The first king, Jeroboam, builds 2 golden calves and tells the people, hey, remember that good old golden calf? Well, now we got 2 of them. How about you worship them instead of going to the temple? So he made up a new holiday in the 8th month instead of the 7th month and had them go worship golden calves instead of going to the temple of Yahweh. Okay. So we're looking at a northern kingdom that's evil. I mean, maybe there was like 2 good kings, maybe. And even then we're like, okay, like they just weren't that bad, right? And then the southern kingdom is pretty bad too. It's Judah, so they're like, they have the pride, we're the Jews, right?
Yeah.
But they suck, and there's like 2 righteous kings, 3? But then there's Manasseh, who's like this so evil that he just fills the streets with blood and idol worship. And eventually the northern kingdom gets exiled by the Assyrian Empire. And then the southern kingdom gets exiled by the Babylonian Empire. And the land is clean out of the Jews. And then 70 years later, you have Ezra returning with a group of Jews, but the majority of the
Still
Israel...
under Babylonian exile.
Yeah, I mean, they're under Persian rule.
Persian rule.
So the Persians, now the Babylonians fall. This is all happening under the context of all these evolving empires in the region. Now the Persian Empire, and so Cyrus the Great actually gives them the green light to go back to Israel, but it's still under the Persian Empire. It's the rule of the Persians. And then they're under the rule of the Greeks, and then under the rule of the Romans.
Very interesting, right? Because we're in a similar situation where even though Israel exists or Jews exist in the U.S., we're still under the U.S. rule, the European rule, or whatever NATO rule.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, same thing with Israel. I mean, if you were to live in Israel, you wouldn't be living in a God-fearing biblical country. You'd be living in a secular democracy that also tends towards extreme warfare, as they've been demonstrating. They seem to have an itch to bomb everyone
Yeah,
in
they
sight.
also have a social dependency on
Oh yeah.
the U.S. and just like wokeism,
I
where
mean,
they have to be okay with everything.
remember, Netanyahu sits in meetings, in podcasts. He goes to Congress and boasts about how Israel is a safe haven for homosexuality, right? Like, and he criticizes the Muslims for being hard stance on LGBTQ when the Torah is the document that establishes
Yeah,
LGBTQ as being negative.
yeah,
And he's like, look at us. We love the gays.
yeah.
You know?
Muslims who come from the same Bible,
Yeah, exactly. Muslims only got their idea of LGBTQ
from the
bad
Jews.
from the Torah,
Yeah.
right? So again, the same Torah that says that the land belongs to the Jews says that LGBTQ is bad. But remember, they're not even coming from a Torah perspective. Like, this is something to talk about. Israel is an ethno-state, which means that if you're a Jew by blood, then you receive special rights. But that's not the Torah's position.
What rights are these? I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, like you have a right to return. So like if you could prove that you're a Jew, you get to come to live in Israel.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? And like the whole point is though, if you read the Torah, the land is not governed by your Jewishness, it's governed by the law. And people can live in the land who are not ethnically Jewish, and as long as they follow the law, they're actually welcome, accepted, and they should be loved and helped additionally. Being Gerim converts, sojourners who live in the land. So the point is, though, that Israel has completely abandoned God and abandoned the Torah in the past and in the present. And so they don't really have any glue keeping them together other than culture and heritage and collective trauma of all the generations being persecuted. So now they're just like, okay, we're the Jews. We're going to like, you know, we're going to do a bunch of shit. Like we're going to have a big,
Okay,
you know.
so Ezra comes, right, and he's the one who finds, or was it Nehemiah that finds the Torah and then talks about Sukkot
Yeah,
not
it
being
was
kept.
both of them. Yeah,
They both existed.
yes, they were
coexisted.
contemporaries. They
Yeah.
both brought, and remember though, they brought a portion of the Jews back. Like Israel was already fully exiled.
Yeah.
In fact, like
There was a piece of them that wanted to go back to Egypt, right?
yeah, no, that was at the end of with Jeremiah. You know, Jeremiah, they had this guy Gedaliah, which like the Jews like make a whole fast out of him, even though he was just like a nobody who was appointed by the king. And then the Jews were upset that they were ruled by him, so they killed him. And then they got afraid that they killed him, so they wanted to go to Egypt. And they asked Jeremiah what to do, and Jeremiah said, "God says if you stay here, He'll give you the land back." This is before the exile of the first temple was destroyed. And they're like, no, they were too afraid, so they just left. But according to that narrative, they actually could have regained the land and stayed there. But instead they went to Egypt and they got sold as slaves and all that. But the point to be made here is that this is a trope within Judaism, that there's 10 lost tribes. Now, I don't really believe that. But the point is they're saying that all of the northern kingdom was exiled so early on that we don't even know where they are. Like, we don't even know who they are.
Well, we have 23andMe now, so we can find out.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. No, but I mean, I think the point to be made, though, is that the Jews were already dispersed all over the world, and the return of the Second Temple was a minority of Jews coming back to the land with Ezra. And even then, that didn't last that long, because already in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, we're seeing they're worshiping other gods, they're not keeping the Sabbath, they're not doing this,
They're
right?
selling on Shabbat.
They're selling, they're doing business on Shabbat, they're not entering into the town square, and they're carrying their burdens, and they're doing all these things, and they're marrying women that they shouldn't be marrying, and it's like it's.
And what's interesting is that it seems like Ezra and Nehemiah. Well, first let me lay a foundation. Like the printing press was, it was created many years later, thousands of years later. So it seems like the Jews still knew the Torah at the time, just for the fact that Ezra and Nehemiah were getting angry at them for doing these things.
Well, remember,
and on top of that, he read it to them.
Yeah, exactly. It says that Ezra was a prophet because he was a proficient scribe in the Torah of Moses, right? And so that's what he did. Ezra actually knew the Torah of Moses.
Is that what it says explicitly?
Yeah.
That he was a scribe?
Yeah.
That's why he was a prophet?
Well, it says like he was a prophet and like it's like followed by the statement for, I don't know if it's like for he was, or and he was a proficient scribe in the Torah of Moses, but it goes hand in hand. Like
Okay.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
cannot have an awareness of God if you are not proficient in the
In the
Torah of
Torah.
Moses.
Yeah.
And because he was, all he did was get up and read the Torah. Be like, everyone, this
Yeah,
is,
that's in line with one of the stories in the Torah, which is like, what if everyone was a prophet? You know, God willing. I think
right.
Moses says that to who was it?
Well, so he
One
said
of
it
the
to
complainers
Joshua. He said it to Joshua when Eldad and Medad
started
were
prophesying in the camp.
prophesying in the camp. Yeah, and the whole point is people are like, oh, like why don't we have prophecy? We actually have access to the greatest prophetic revelation in all time.
Yeah, so what are we waiting for?
So what are we waiting for? Exactly, right? It's pretty pathetic to look at God and be like, hey God, can you talk to me when he already talked to you and he already told you what to do, right? And it's like this especially applies to the Jews because this is said to them, and they're the
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
who
I
are
mean,
furthest from
that's a
it.
common objection from a lot of agnostics, and I would probably not atheists, but more agnostics. Like, I won't believe in God unless He actually speaks to me or reveals Himself to me.
Me.
Right? How prideful is
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, it's wild. Like that assumption is wild. It's like it's not enough that you exist, that you're a
Yeah.
human being, that you're a conscious human being on earth. No, no, no. Let the Lord of all existence speak to me so that I shall believe in him. You know, like you can't that's not you can't say that. Are
Yeah.
you
Show me a
crazy?
miracle.
Are you
You know,
crazy?
if they go to a magic show,
Yeah.
will they'll still not believe if it was posed as a like real magic.
Right. Yeah. No, by the way, you can see miracles and still deny them. Remember, the Israelites are witnessing open miracles in their face. God has just finished talking to them, telling them, do not worship graven images. And then they worship a golden calf. Right? In the same thing with Adam and Eve. They're in the Garden of Eden. God himself is telling them, don't eat from this tree. Well, immediately, fucking eating. You know, it's insane because it just shows that that's human nature. God can reveal himself to you in your face, and it's not going to change your behavior unless you change, your behavior. And that's God's message. It's like, you're bad, and it's your fault, and you need to get better if you want anything to get better.
I had a dream last night. It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Go ahead.
My sister posing as a witness came to tell me that like this whole time my mother has been beating my father, abusing him, or my stepfather. So she tells me that she's been doing it for a long time. Whenever they've gotten into arguments, my mom tends to hit him. And it was because there was this one moment many years ago where my stepfather hit her during an argument. And the years after that, he would restrain himself because he felt so bad and he would let her hit him. And it was until something recently happened where they got into a really bad argument and he humbled her and hit her back. Right. And that's what stopped her again. So I started thinking a little bit too much into it. And I was thinking like that's exactly the relationship between God and the Jewish people or people in general. Right. God punishes them, feels bad for many years. The people start going against God for all those years, receiving no punishment in return, just for God to humble them again. Right? So do you think it's necessary for God to intervene again in order to humble the people?
First of all, it's a pretty wild dream and very accurate symbolism. I mean, you see this Israel compared to a wife, to God's wife, who's like a harlot and cheating on God with other gods, and God is jealous, and so
Yeah.
he gets angry, and all of that is very real. I mean, do I think it's necessary? Obviously, it's not up to me to decide. Like it's like God decides what to do. All I could say is, in case people are looking for a big red arrow pointing somewhere, there was something that happened less than 100 years ago called the Holocaust. That actually happened, and I grew up reading about that, watching documentaries, seeing footage, and knowing that this is what happened to my people less than 100 years ago. An entire, there were so many Jews in Europe. Like Europe was full of Jews, like kind of like America is today. There's like 5 million Jews in America, and Jews are pretty known presence in America. Okay, imagine that in
Europe,
Germany and Poland and all that.
all of the European
All
countries.
over,
Yeah.
right? All over. And then within the course of 6 years, 1939 to 1945, they're all gone. And there's maybe like 1 or 2 survivors per family. And all they have to say is, we were starved and we were working shifts from 6 a.m. in the morning in the snow with wooden boots, emaciated. I mean, like, this stuff is just beyond description. And the death is frightening, and the evil. And that would be an example of God humbling the Jewish people. And then, even then, he gives them a blessing. He gives them the state of Israel right after that. So in 1945, World War II ends. In 1948, they receive the state of Israel. So it all just comes back to, what are the Jews doing with their blessings? And are they learning from the harsh discipline that God places on us? And like, discipline is one way to put it. Another way to put it is just suffering. God inflicts immense suffering on the Jewish people. And honestly, that scares me. So I just want to know what we can do to make sure these things don't happen again. And it all comes back to the Torah. Believing in that narrative means that there is a response, there is a solution, and the solution is based off of our actions and how well our actions align with God's will or not. And this is something that's like tough to talk about. I was reading Carl Jung yesterday in the Red Book. I'm almost done, but just actually the craziest book I've ever read. I mean, this guy is just different.
Nutty.
He's nutty. I mean, he is nutty, and he's talking about a world that he exists in that it's not manic. He's actually experiencing crazy communication with like all sorts of spirits and gods and in his dreams, and it's really wild. But one of the things he was just ranting about at the end is like how dare I tell other people? And he's a therapist, by the way. He's a psychoanalyst. His job was to sit down and give
Help
people
others.
guidance.
Yeah.
And he was just ripping himself apart. It's like, look at you, you fool. You barely have your own house in order. You can hardly handle yourself, and you're walking around telling other people what to do. Like, what the fuck are you? You're pathetic. And he just goes like, pathetic worm, you're worthless, right? And by the way, 100%, it's just 100% true. At the same time, what we're doing here, we're not talking about our own opinions, okay? Like, we're talking about a revelation that was given to a people, and more broadly was given to all of humanity. And it's our job to speak of it and to teach it to our children, to enforce these laws amongst our people. And it's a law that's above us as individuals. This is not me telling you what to do. I myself lack in these areas, but I didn't write the book. God wrote the book, according to the belief. And so this is information that is for everyone and needs to be known. And so it's very hard you have to kind of remove your ego from that. That's why Moses is such a great example, because he's the humblest of all men. The man who's closest to God is the most humble, because it's not for him. He has zero self-interest. It's simply, I'm here to convey God's message, and the fact that I know it is simply a blessing.
Yeah.
But I want everyone to know it, and everyone needs to know it.
No, I think that's why that idea of having some sort of brotherly, fatherly relationship with God is just really inaccurate. You can describe it that way if you have some sort of feelings with God, but ultimately you are His servant. Like, if you, and that's exactly like it makes so much sense whenever you go into the laws of the slaves, right? If you're a slave, you do what your master says, and your master shall treat you kindly. So much so that he provides all your livelihood, and you're worth to him double a worker's wage. Like, that's exactly how God treats us as his creation. Even though we've gone against him many times, he's shown his grace, he's shown his mercy with us, and he even does now, right? There's things in your life, there's things in my life, and everybody who's watching where they're not so proud of, and they know they sinned against God. However, we just hope that he treats us well. And from my experience, he still does. So the correct relationship is that he is our Lord, our master, and we are his servants. So that is our life purpose. And everything else, as long as we're following what his commands are, we reap as a reward. Right? Our children, our vacations, our livelihood, our food, everything else is just a blessing. And God is the one providing everything for us, just as a master provides for his slave.
Yeah. Well, look, by the way, that's 100% true. At the same time, there is also a father and son thing going on. God says,
Mm-hmm.
"You are my children. I am your father." That is in the Torah too.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way,
Yeah, I will
there's more.
chastise you as
Yeah,
I
as a
chastise.
father chastises his son, he says, "You are children to Yahweh your God." And then it says, He is your father. It's interesting. It says that He is your
Sure.
father, your master.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's
So
both, right?
that's exactly what a father is. I guess the way I meant to portray it is like the the masculine father is accurate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the way it's described is as a feminine father.
A feminine father, exactly.
Like
Exactly.
he is my feminine father in
He
heaven,
is my
who
feminine
who
father.
who loves me in a feminine way,
I love that. That's
right?
hilarious. No, that's
I mean,
exact. I mean, by the way, that just completely misses the point of what a father is, right? But actually, the Hebrew word for father, the root word is ava, which means to submit, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, the masculine force that submits you, and it's no coincidence that God communicates with us in the masculine. Even though femininity is a divine reality,
Mhm.
God insists on being called a father in the
Yeah,
masculine.
and what's interesting, you said this in the past where you said it's almost like the masculine sphere engulfs the feminine sphere,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the feminine only exists in the masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's very accurate. I
Yeah.
can't really describe it, but it sounds right.
Yeah, again, it's like the masculine submits the feminine, and the
Mhm.
feminine is submitted to the masculine. And every time we talk about masculine and feminine, it's always like a little vague, but
Oh yeah,
it's
it
just
has to be
yeah, it has to be right because it's
for it
so
to make
it's
sense,
so
even though it
beyond
doesn't.
our comprehension. Yet it's exactly at the heart of existence itself. But if you think about the earth, for example, the earth is referred to as feminine,
Hmm.
but the earth is created by the masculine, and it's even in ancient uh, religions, they saw the rain as the masculine seed from heaven impregnating the earth, right?
Yeah.
And so the earth is the womb, right? The feminine is the womb that receives the masculine. So yeah, it's you don't worship the feminine. That's kind of the message of the
Yeah,
Torah.
yeah.
Even though in other religions you got gods and goddesses, and sometimes in religions there's just straight goddess worship, which
Mhm.
is interesting. It says in the Old Testament the prophets were berating the Jews for worshiping the Queen of Heaven, right? And
Mm-hmm.
even according to ancient myth, Asherah, which is like the Jews would worship the Asherah trees, represented the wife of Yahweh, right? And Yahweh's like,
No,
no, no, no, no, no,
no.
no, right? Even if you
Yeah,
just think about that, right? Like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
like, think about how the feminine needs to be protected, right? Like, let's just say
It needs to
God's,
be
yeah,
encased.
it needs to be encased, and let's just say God's feminine, for the sake of argument, God's feminine counterpart. That's not, you don't talk to her, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
talk to God, right? Like
yeah,
if
yeah.
you come to me, you don't talk to my wife, talk to me, right? Like
Hmm.
there's something about that. The feminine needs to be protected,
Yeah.
and like even the way like one woman, a woman belongs to one man, right? And she needs to be covered, right? Like Sarah is in the tent, she's not sitting out with the men. There's something that's completely been lost on people, which is like you said, now we have a feminine father and a masculine mother, and we're all fucked,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like the reality is that when people stop playing out their roles in life, everything becomes inverted, and now we just have a false view of reality. We want reality to work this way, so we pretend that it works this way even though it doesn't. And you see this with like the modern movie franchise where you have the badass bitch who's just kicking the ass of like 50 men. And you're like, this
Hmm.
is not real in any universe. But
Hmm.
they're trying to create a fake reality because that's what the reality they want to live in. It's
Hmm.
like, that's not
Hmm.
going to work. You cannot fake
Well,
reality.
let's talk about whenever you do enter that sphere or that new reality. It's very exciting to have new revelations revealed to you. Now, when you start opening the floodgates of femininity and its divine aspects, you start to dissolve the structure that's provided by the masculine sphere. So you start trying to develop and enjoying that feminine relationship where everything goes, right? How grand is this? The fact that there's all this chaos. And let me just, that's God. That's God to me.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I want to be with him where he's okay with anything. And like all the structured commandments that exist within the masculine sphere are, I don't believe it. You know, I believe in the fact that God is everything, everywhere, all at once, and there's no rules except for the fact that I have my single prideful relationship with Him through this retarded aspect.
Yeah. By the way, I've heard it so much from people that are agnostic atheists who completely deny the text of the Torah as being true. Yet they're like, I believe in God. God, what is God to me? What do I feel God is?
Yeah,
And it always is some sort of like, I'm overwhelmed by the chaos of existence.
and
I'm
that is
just,
God.
yeah, and that is God, right?
Yeah,
And
because it's so much bigger in my
yeah,
mind.
yeah, yeah. And by the way, that just remember, it's like a tornado will fuck you up. Okay, like it doesn't take a lot to overwhelm a human being, right? And so there's so many forces in existence. If every force that overwhelms you is God, there is quite literally an infinity amount of gods. But the whole point of the Torah is that the Elohim, the gods, are one, and that's Yahweh, and He's above all the gods. And so if existence was just a bunch of chaotic forces, then there's no point at which they meet. There's no point at which there's a unity or an order in any of them. But the whole point is that there's a force in existence. This is the Torah's claim. There's a force in existence that unifies all of the forces, that is above all of them, the God of gods, the Lord of lords,
And He has spoken.
and He has spoken, and He is one, and He has created all of this, and we're all of us, from the tiniest speck of dust to a bug to a human to an angel to a demon, whatever the fuck exists, we all bow to Him. And what does that create? That creates a reality in which there is a supreme order, despite the vastness and the chaos and everything that exists. At the end of the day, there is an order, and it's echoed in the prophets. Like the day will come when everyone will bow to God, and everyone will understand that He is the one. And again, we wouldn't have these things if we didn't have the revelation. That's the importance of the prophecy. That's the importance of these texts. And if people are just going to wake up in 2025 and start working with their feelings, we're looking at an extremely corrupt world. And that's just the direct result of people not acknowledging.
And by the way, democracy is supposed to be the solution for this.
Yeah, human beings deciding morality.
Yeah, no, seriously. That's the current solution to all of it.
Absolutely.
And we've seen democracy in the U.S. was created under a God-given pretense.
Yeah.
And the very founders, like the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, who were trying to like understand like what's the best way to go about it, to create a governing system, were calling each other out how these things can be corrupted very easily, and they were trying to fill every gap, but they couldn't. Right? They just didn't have the human understanding to do so, right? But ultimately, like God is the one who's supposed to rule people, and let alone the nation. So they gave their best effort into creating that government, and now you're seeing how all of this is coming to be, where things are getting corrupted. The government has been infiltrated by, as Jordan Peterson calls it, parasites who feed off of it and give nothing in return. And now it's become this whale carcass, as he describes it.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, the thing is that it's even in a complete theocracy vision like the Torah, in order for that to become corrupted, all you need is for just people to not follow it. Right? Like, if people don't follow the law, then the law doesn't exist. I mean, it exists, but no one follows it. Or if the judges are sitting here making up all of their own laws and they're saying all their own, then there's nothing that's keeping us together. Now, as far as the U.S. goes, they explicitly founded it on the separation of church and state, and the foundation of democracy being people voting in law. And so that opens the door for
Oh yeah.
secularists to be like, well, look, the church has no say, and we get to vote. We get to vote.
Hmm.
So, we're,
Yeah.
we're, we're
And
going
by
to
the
do
way, it was the thing that was underpinning all of it was the Christian God, their
that.
understanding of God,
Yeah.
which is a God that um, accepts anyone and everyone. And Jesus has absolved everyone of their obligations to the Torah law,
Yeah.
including gaydom,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that is a law there. It's abomination to put
Yeah.
a gay man to death if
Yeah.
he commits gay acts.
Yeah. But I mean, again, the,
So,
the old Christians
but
believed.
that's exactly why the separation of church and state was something that they wanted to institute, right? Like you'll hear all these explanations on like, oh, there's been a lot of corruption between how state interferes with the church and whatever, so that we want to separate them.
Mm.
But also, they wanted to accept all religions,
Right.
every
Yeah,
religion.
yes and no, because you see such weird writings that would contradict this. Like from the founding fathers, they say this is assuming that we're a moral people who follow God,
Hmm.
and being gay was a crime. I don't know if they put people to death, but it was a crime. I
Hmm.
mean, they were killing witches. Like that's only the Bible
Hmm.
says to do things like that, right? And so I don't know exactly. It's
Well,
a
there's
very
a lot
weird
of different
evolution.
sects of Christianity.
I
Whether
know,
or
but
not they
it's
kept the gay stuff, they still believed in the God or Jesus
mhm.
being someone who absolves everyone of the law.
Yeah. Well, look, it's an awful premise for a law-based society that we are all absolved from the law and we're all absolved from our sins. So, like,
Yeah,
what exactly are we doing here? Like, I had a debate with a Christian guy, and he says, listen, like, Christians, we shouldn't be worrying about politics or like government. Like, we should just be sitting here awaiting Jesus Christ. And he actually said the
yeah,
quiet part a lot, which is from a Christian point of view, it doesn't actually make sense for you to do anything
hmm, hmm,
because
hmm,
that's not what Christ wants you to do. Like this is just a vast
yeah,
war between God and the devil, and it will be solved through the second coming of Jesus. And this, by the way, the same thing with the Jewish theology. Like there's no real explanation for this timeline other than after 6,000 years the Messiah will come, and then the third temple will fall out of the sky and will be redeemed. And it's like
yeah, yeah,
there is no rhyme or reason to any of this, and so your actions make no difference.
yeah.
That's kind of this
Well,
nihilistic view.
what's interesting is that early Christianity, at least within the first 250 years, they were trying to find some sort of orthodoxy. Right, in the very early years, probably the first 100 years, they existed as like there was a lot of different churches. They each had their own understanding of Christianity, but they were obsessed with the fact that there was going to be a second coming of Jesus in which the world will end and certain people will be saved. So they didn't even care about a structured organization. They cared about like spread the gospel, let everybody convert to Christ because the end of times is coming. It's coming fast, right?
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, then people still kept Jesus in the mix, and they were starting to try to find some sort of orthodoxy within Christianity. And you saw all these different, you know, missions and objectives that they were trying to accomplish so that they can get some sort of order around the Christian church. And later on in history, you'll see that the Christians kind of split into two main sects, which is Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism, and then Christians still exist as other sects, and you see them here in the U.S. Whether you call them Protestants or as the guy that you just spoke to, who still believes that the second coming is imminent.
Yeah.
So Christians should even care about politics or anything at all because we should just be worshiping Christ and spreading the message so that everybody's saved.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, they have this famous saying that acts do not redeem you. Like your acts, the actions that you
Hmm.
do, are not going to affect the outcome.
Hmm.
And that's like it's just a sick idea. Like
Yeah.
it's completely anti-Torah. The Torah is all about actions. It's all about things you must do in order to achieve a desired outcome. And the minute that you deny the consequence of your actions, this whole life becomes some sort of
Yeah, it's
comedy or something.
we talked about this, the femininity and the masculinity. It, you keep you say that all the actions that you complete do not matter, yet you keeping the spirit of the law is much it precedes that. or supersedes that. So why not both? I think Christians do a really good job at keeping or enunciating the spirit of the law, whereas Jewish people don't.
Right.
At least from what I've seen.
Yeah.
But I think the mixing of the two is really what matters.
Exactly. Which, by the way, is perfectly in line with being a human being. Like,
And by the way, the Torah teaches this. Torah is not black and white with their
Exactly.
commandments.
Exactly. But I'm saying, isn't that what it means to be a human being? You are a spiritual and a physical being, and you require both spiritual and physical commandments and actions in order to achieve that. And one of the good examples is circumcision. Circumcision of the heart and circumcision of the flesh, right? A spiritual circumcision and a physical circumcision. And so the Christians will be like, well, that physical circumcision, you don't need that shit,
Yeah,
right?
you
Paul,
just need to-
you don't need that. You don't need that, right? It's like, why not both? Woo, right? Like that's that the whole the Torah's point is you need both actually, and you see this in Jewish mysticism too, even in Jewish rational thinking, the disconnect between the physical and the spiritual, the idea that the material world is somehow disgusting or needless, and we're just here as some sort of punishment, and it's all about the afterlife or the next world or something different, a purely spiritual existence, then we'll be united with God, right? It's like, what makes you think that a material existence is
that's
at
something
odds
that I
with
thought.
God?
That's something what I thought, and it was in the story of the Garden of Eden, where God clothed them with skin. I read that as humans did not have flesh in the beginning.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they
by the way,
became flesh and were susceptible to death after God clothed them. That's the way I interpreted it.
I understand. I mean,
But
that's
even then,
not just your interpretation. That's a classic, like, mystical reading of it. But if you just read
it was original
literally,
to me, at least.
okay, cool. And I understand why you might think that. But if you just read it simply, God already made man out of dust, out of earth. Okay, so he didn't make man out of some spiritual matter. He made him out of dust, right? That was prior to the sin. And what it says is that he clothed him with like loincloths made out of. So it was a way to cover their nakedness.
I
made
think
out of skin.
I think the translation I read,
Or even
I don't
leather,
remember.
you could say.
Yeah,
Like, 'cause
I-
leather
you
and
brought
skin.
this up to me. I don't know if you remember that conversation. Do you?
About what?
About the skin thing. I said you clothe them with skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I think I was trying to grasp for hidden meanings, and of course, I was being a Gnostic at the time, because that's much more interesting than actionable commandments.
Exactly.
Let's go back to history then.
Okay.
So Ezra, the Persians are ruling, right?
Yeah.
What happens after Ezra?
I mean, what happens after Ezra? Things just don't get better.
Well,
I mean,
how close to the time of Jesus was Ezra?
Maybe a couple hundred years.
A couple hundred. Okay, so like that's pretty much next.
Yeah,
the
that's
Romans
next.
take over.
Between the Romans and the Persians is the Greeks, right? And so what happens during the times of the Greeks is that you have the Hasmoneans. So the Hasmoneans are the Jewish priesthood and kings.
And by the way, Ezra is during the Second Temple.
Ezra builds the Second Temple.
Yeah, he builds the second.
He builds
okay,
the Second Temple, and now we got Jews back in Israel, and they were trying to establish a state and all that, and they even had a temple, and they were doing things according to the law, but obviously they're breaking the law, they're not being righteous, and then we have the Greeks come in, so the Greeks overthrow the Persians, and now the Greeks are in charge, and the Jews try to gain independence. And that's the Hanukkah story.
Yeah,
the Hanukkah story is the Hasmoneans are fighting with the Greeks, and they end up regaining control over the land, control over the temple, and you have a dynasty of kings and priests. So they were actually both kings and priests, which people would say is an overreach of power, because in the Torah's vision, the priests come from Levi, and then the kings are a different sector, maybe Judah or whatever. But the point is, they were ruling the land. But as we then pass the Greek period, there's the Romans. And already once the Romans get in, they're just ruling the people. Like, it's very clear that the Romans ruled Israel.
So
Israel didn't rule itself.
That brings us to a very important place in history, because that's when Jesus comes into the mix. Christianity develops, and on top of that, we start to see a lot of activity between the different sects of Judaism.
Oh yeah.
Right?
By the way,
Pharisees,
a civil war, a religious civil war.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the Pharisees, the Sadducees, who had influence because they were also part of the Sanhedrin,
Hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
didn't know that until recently. And then we have the Essenes, which were kind of like,
The cave people.
yeah, the cave people. That's what I mean. It makes sense that I put them on the little thumb icon because they're kind of separate, but they were very much elitist, trying to upkeep purity to the highest degree according to their definitions, and just removing themselves from the very earth that they exist in. Because
Hmm.
that's what they did. They're cave people, and
Yeah.
they were trying to come up with this ultimate idea of rebellion to like just wipe out everyone essentially and take over Israel.
Hmm.
But yeah, but the main two groups are the Pharisees and the Sadducees,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, no,
So,
the people are
so
extremely.
a question that, and I really want you to go in depth because I think this is very important for people to understand, both Christians and Jewish people and people coming to the faith. Who exactly are the Sadducees, and who exactly are the Pharisees?
Yeah. I mean,
I think the Sadducees first.
yeah, that is a very important conversation. And yeah, as you're pointing out, the Jewish people are extremely fractured at that point. And the main disagreement is the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees are priests, they're acting as priests, as judges. They do not believe in the Pharisees' approach, which is to constantly be interpreting and to then put their interpretation as law, right? Because at that point, the Pharisees are the rabbinics, they're the
Mm-hmm.
rabbis, and they're the guys who are writing the Mishnah and the Midrash. Midrash is more of the narrative part of the rabbi's writings, and the Mishnah is the law. It's already being written
Mm-hmm.
at that point at the end of the Second Temple, and they're just pumping out. They have like their yeshivas, they got their rabbis, they got Hillel and Shammai, and you got Rabbi Akiva and all these guys, and they have a monopoly on the institution of law. But at the same time, the Sadducees actually are more powerful at that time. And they just believe in the Torah. They're like, the written Torah is the law. And it's not that they didn't have their own stuff going on, but the fundamental disagreement was, what is the Torah? Is the Torah the five books of Moses, the Word of God, or is the Torah the five books of Moses and everything else that we say about it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that's an important disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sadducees would be the group that I think were closer to the truth, obviously, because they were sticking to the Word of God as the foundation. Even if in a country you got to make interpretations, you got to make laws, you got to have things going on, but what do we all value as the universal law that we're held accountable to? It's the Torah, it's the five books of Moses. And the Pharisees were just off on their tangent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and they never stopped. Since then, they have not stopped, and they actually achieved rule over the Jewish people in the exile,
Mm-hmm.
most of all.
So how soon was the exile? Because it happened very very rapidly.
Pretty rapidly. Pretty rapidly. I mean, we're talking about the Romans just coming in and smoking everyone, you
And the
know?
way it happened was, I think that the catalyst to that event was the fact that one of the Roman generals or someone who ruled the province started taking tax and stealing from the temple. So that caused a revolt, right?
Yeah.
And that's when they went in and started expelling all the
Yeah,
Jews.
it was also
Well, there was
very,
a lot of tension anyway preceding that. Like the
yeah.
Jewish people were just these nasty,
Mhm.
rabid parasites to the Roman
Yeah,
uh,
to the Romans.
occupation.
Another interesting thing that I actually found out when I visited Rome is that at that point the Roman Empire was struggling. They were
Hmm.
poor, and they needed money and they needed gold, and the temple was full of gold, right,
Hmm.
and money. And so they just destroyed the temple and looted it and took everything. And
Hmm.
then the temple has always signified the establishment of the nation. And so if the temple's destroyed, and then they just start exiling the Jews. You know, they are exiling them to Babylon. They're exiling them all around.
They exiled all the people in control of the banks, so that's why they fell.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, so, you know, the Romans uh, were brutal and, you know, they killed Jesus in
Hmm.
collusion with the Pharisees. And so, yeah, we're just looking at pretty quickly the Jews are out. And, you know, they tried to stay in the land. That's why you have like the Jerusalem Talmud, because there were still Jews in the land, but they were
Hmm.
corresponding with the rabbis in Babylon. And once the land was destroyed and the temple was destroyed, and the Sadducees kind of faded away. All that was left was the Pharisees and their rule over the Jewish people. And so since then, we've basically had a split in Judaism, which is the Rabbinites, and then there's the secular Jews, right? And so like it's been like a slow trickle of Jews leaving Judaism to become secular to the point where we are now, where the majority of Jews are secular. They're not even religious. But as far as the religious Jews, the Pharisees maintained rulership.
Let's also remember, because it's something we can relate to now, as far as like how Rome ruled a certain territory that contained a lot of different types of people. Just as the U.S. rules the U.S. that contains a lot of different types of people who have different beliefs. So the Roman state was very much like where we are now, where
There's an empire.
there's many different religions that existed. There was trends that existed, and there was many different gods, right? So during that time, Jewish people, civilians, Gentiles, different cities were influenced by not only the Jewish God, but also by all the other gods. So it became a very nasty mix of who worshipped who, and what ideas can I grab from the Greek culture, from this culture or this culture. And it all kind of got mixed up into this weird Gnosticism that existed not only in Judaism, but also in early Christianity. And everybody kind of just chose their own gods. So I just wanted to point that out, because it gives you a flavor of what the people were like during that time.
Yeah, this even started during the Greeks. I mean, the Greeks started the Great Revolution, the philosophers, all of that, right? And so already then you have the Hellenized Jews who are adopting Greek culture and Greek ideology
And applying it to
and
Judaism.
applying it to Judaism. And so you're already seeing Judaism is fracturing because people no longer find the Torah to even be sufficient. They now
it's
need
no longer relevant,
yeah,
just
it's
like
not
it is
relevant.
today,
Exactly. It's not the Torah loses its relevance really quickly.
when there's no established government by the Israelites.
Exactly. Yeah, especially because they're being ruled by the Greeks, they're being ruled
Yeah.
by the Romans. So people usually just submit to the highest power.
Yeah, even though they're being persecuted, they look the other way and just say, "Oh, well, like I have my garlic and my meat, so I'll just like lounge around, and when I'm off my 9 to 5, I'll go ahead and see like what am I into today? Should I read
Yeah.
Plato?
What is being shown at the theater?
Yeah."
Yeah, they have.
Who is your god today? Who have you
Yeah.
learned from?
Well, I mean, in the Greeks and the Romans, I mean, they just developed such a vast picture of the gods.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like such also fascinating literature. Of
Let
like,
alone the very emperors were
considered
appointed by God,
yeah, or
by
they
their God.
themselves were gods, or
Yeah.
they were appointed by gods, and they're having all these rituals.
Yeah, and the Jewish people were the only religion that didn't or they didn't recognize the God of Rome.
Yeah, right, exactly. By definition, they're always worshiping Yahweh. Like if you're a Jew, you can never.
The idea of
worship another
monotheism
god.
was very foreign to that region.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, again, everything about their religion was the more gods, the merrier. You know, and so there were not gods, goddesses, fathers, sons. You know, there's cheating scandals. This god's cheating on that god, and this goddess is whoring around. And not to mention, there's interesting evidence of psychedelic ceremonies. So you could imagine just like a bunch of Greek philosophers tripping on psychedelics, conversing with the gods.
Yeah.
It was a crazy time. And so that's another challenge, interesting to point out, of being a Jew is like, how do you not fall for the culture, the dominant culture that's usually so much glitter and so idolized and idealized, right? Like, how do you take a step back, even just modernly? Like, look at the culture, right? The pizzazz, the social media, the slutty culture and the whore culture. Like, how do you see through that? Because most people don't. Most if you look at what just happened to women's fashion, okay, like women went from wearing dresses to wearing crop tops and booty shorts, and that's considered acceptable. And we're now desensitized to nudity because pornography is just everywhere.
Yeah.
And whether it's actual hardcore porn or just softcore porn on billboards everywhere.
Yeah, on
Like,
Instagram.
on
like
Instagram,
girls
like-
shaking their ass in
Exactly.
miniskirts.
Like what is that, right?
That's a trend.
Yeah, it's a trend, and people don't have the foresight. They don't have the perspective. They don't have they don't have the ability to see just how harmful these things are because they're just part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, that's the thing about the Torah is it no matter what time, whatever time period you're in, whatever place in the world you're in, you have to continuously refer back to these original principles and not deviate to the right or the left, no matter what.
And you have to constantly teach the
Yeah.
Torah, not other things,
Yes.
to your children.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only obligation you have.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure you already know the recent situation where if you start, you have to make a really good effort to not teach your children obedience to something outside of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if it's parallel to the Torah, because it's very easy to completely cast away the Torah when you come to a revelation and realize that the very religion you grew up in is completely false and wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a really difficult effort because you can be blinded, right? Like people are busy all day. So when you have a family and you're just taking someone who you find to be trustworthy as your guide and you don't question it and you don't read it for yourself, then you'll just follow on that path and your children might just leave.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's really awful. But at the end of the day, like you can only do so much as well as a parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we talk about the dominant culture, even within the religion, the dominant culture is ungodly. What are the dominant forces in Judaism? Orthodoxy, Reform, like none of them are actually following the Torah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if you were to just say, okay, I'm not a Greek, I'm not a Roman, I'm not an atheist, I'm a Jew, right? And I go to synagogue and I go to temple and I follow all the things and I send my kids to Jewish school and all this. No, like that's not going to cut it because the institutions are corrupted. They do not represent the Torah. They're not teaching Torah. They're teaching Kabbalah. They're teaching mysticism. They're teaching folklore. They're teaching false law. They're teaching halacha. Halacha is literally just a development of thousands of opinions of rabbis telling you to do a bunch of strange things that the Torah never tells you to do, requiring you to live an entirely different lifestyle than the one that God is encouraging you to live. And people don't even know how to differentiate between what is from God and what is from man because it's all just a package deal.
Yeah.
Right? And as you said, when people become disillusioned with Judaism because it's such a disaster, they just throw the baby out with the bathwater because they can't differentiate what is the baby and what is the dirty bathwater. It's all just one big thing. They just toss it out.
Yep. Yep. Especially when you're infected by the bathwater.
Yeah, especially when that bathwater is
It's
so dirty.
So
You know,
dirty.
and damn, the baby's fucking sick because of all this. But like, you still don't throw the baby out. You know, you got to take care of that baby because that baby is the life force.
Yeah,
that is the
womb.
future.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's just crazy to me that the Torah has just always been hiding in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one's even. It's the first thing. But everyone's just writing more and more and more and more and more. The books are piling
and also
higher.
people encourage you to skip past it
Mm-hmm.
because all the conclusions are actually condensed and compiled in a different book.
Yeah.
That's much longer than Torah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like the 250-page clear document in the name of God will confuse you, but the 19,000 million books
It's
by
a
a bunch
more
of lunatics,
specific.
that will clarify it for you.
Yeah.
Do you not see? And it's like, you know, it's just clearly another propaganda method.
Oh, it's nasty,
And,
dude.
you know,
Very nasty.
Yeah.
Here, can we take a break though? I need to pee.
Yeah, go
really
ahead.
bad. Kerites. When did they come into the picture? Like, was it during that time of the Pharisees and Sadducees? Did they come later? Like, when were they established, and what's their philosophy?
They actually came later. They did. There was a gap. I mean, there was a gap from the Sadducees to the Pharisees. I don't know exactly the year, but it was a couple hundred years. Like the Pharisees didn't come onto the scene until maybe even like 1,000 years later, something like that. So
Really?
like there was a really big gap. Yeah, to say that the Pharisees had complete control over the
Well,
Jews.
yeah, no, the Sadducees were the main group of Jews, essentially. They just didn't have a term, right? They were just Jewish people, I'm
Well,
assuming. And then the Pharisees kind of termed themselves the Pharisees.
yeah, but the thing is that once the Jews were exiled the Pharisees were the dominant religious force.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a distinct group of Jews who said, no, like, we're not following this system. We're going to follow only the Torah until the Kerites came along.
Then was it just they were just Jews until later on they were classified as two different sects of Judaism, essentially?
Well, not really, because all of the Jews were seemingly following the Pharisees. Obviously I wasn't there, so I don't know. Maybe people privately held different beliefs.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as a actual developed group of Jews who were vocal about the fact that they didn't follow the Pharisees' rules, that would really just be the Kerites. And I mean, you can search it up if you don't mind. Just
Sure.
like
What am I searching up exactly?
when did the Kerites come about? I want to say it was like 600 CE or something, but it could even be later. But yeah, essentially, they popped up later on.
Right here. The Karaite movement emerged in the late 8th and 9th century, so
Yeah.
800s-ish, in the Middle East, specifically in Mesopotamia, present-day Iran, and Iraq.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like in Babylon. But the point is that, 800 years. 800 years after Christ, which is the exile of the Jews.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a long period where the Pharisees enjoyed pure control. And by the way, the Kerites were always a very minor movement. So it's not like they ever posed a real threat to the Orthodoxy. In fact, the Orthodoxy was very effective at shutting people down. A guy just told me the other day about a character in Jewish history, this guy like Uriel something, and he was trying to become a Karaite in an Orthodox community, and they gave him lashes in the street.
Oh, wow.
And then excommunicated him and made his life so miserable, and then he ended up committing suicide. Okay, so
Oh, my God.
that was the fate of a Karaite in Orthodox circles.
He was a heretic.
He was a heretic. Yeah, exactly. To them, if you deny the authority of the rabbi, you are a heretic. Period.
You're a heretic now.
Yes.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's an awful title. Isn't Karaite also a term ascribed to these people? Because you said it meant cut off.
No. So that's actually a misconception. So karet means cut off.
Correct.
Karaite really just comes from the word in Hebrew would be karaim. Kara means the verse, the writing. So there are people that just follow
the writing,
the written law, and not the oral law.
But they also follow all of the Tanakh, essentially.
Yes. So that's the thing is the Kara refers to all of the Tanakh.
Now, would you call them a Messianic Jew? I mean, Messianic Jews believe in Jesus, essentially, but
yes, they are more Messianic because they believe in the Tanakh. So, like, I wouldn't ascribe faith to the entire Tanakh in the way I do to the Torah, although I appreciate the Tanakh. The Tanakh brings in ideas of messianic prophecies and the resurrection of the dead and all sorts of things like that. And I have no idea what the future is going to bring. So I'm not saying these things will not happen or they cannot happen, but it's definitely not Torah beliefs, and they're not Torah-centered ideologies, and it has nothing to do with what you should be. How should you be acting right now? Should you be forcing yourself to believe a bunch of strange ideas about corpses coming out of their grave when God never talks about that, right? Like, what does God want you to do? He wants you to live. He wants you to live this life and be well and be righteous. And the whole idea of a Messiah Savior being the culmination of history is when the Messiah comes is an awful way to construct redemption. The Torah's redemption story, Deuteronomy chapter 30, you and your children return to God and He will redeem you. I say this all the time, and I won't stop saying it because that is the pathway to redemption, the individual and the family unit being redeemed by God. Did you hear anything about
Isn't that very interesting? The family unit itself doesn't mean an entire nation or an entire world.
Exactly. That's the thing. Is like the power lies in the individual and the family unit, and the Savior is God. Did you hear a word about a Messiah? No. The worship, the end goal towards a Messiah is an awful ideology. It's just a sick ideology, and I don't even think it's justified by the prophets. Like, at the end of the day, yes, the prophets may harp on like the great leader, the Davidic lineage, and the redeem, but that's not even the core of what they're saying. Like, just because they're talking about a great leader doesn't mean that that's the whole purpose of our journey through history is to arrive at the coming of the Messiah. That's a later Jewish idea. That's a rabbinic idea. That's a Jewish idea that then the Christians adopt. But even from the Old
Well, the
Testament,
Jewish people adopt and then eventually spread to the Gentiles.
yeah, exactly. But it's in no way even the message of the Old Testament. Like you're not walking away from the Old Testament being like, oh, the Messiah. Like it's such a minor narrative.
Oh yeah,
At the
you
end of
get
the
you
day.
get influenced by that idea through other people
Yes,
rather than the text itself.
absolutely. Yeah.
And
From the
you would have to like literally fucking search constantly in order to come to that conclusion yourself.
yes, you have to
Isn't that
find
insane?
the one
I wouldn't
text.
I wouldn't even have thought of the Messiah if I didn't already have that impregnated in my
Exactly.
mind.
Exactly. Exactly. And we've read the Old Testament. We read it
Yeah.
together. That's not, you're not walking
No,
away
that's not
being
the
like
main point.
the Messiah. No, not
Yeah.
at all. You're walking away being like follow God, follow His commandments, and all of the mentions of great leaders are simply people who have good attributes and who are uh, divine people who are blessed by God. And that's not like one person per se. These attributes are available to everyone. So again, to limit yourself under the leadership of another person would just defeat the purpose of your own humanity. And so you, your family, God, that's the unit that you need to be looking at. And let God appoint whatever leaders He wants. There is always going to be leaders and followers. But then again, Moses' statement, if only everyone was prophets. Jeremiah's prophecy, the Spirit of God will be in everyone. Right? There's a place to get to where we're actually maybe this is a little too idealistic, but there's a place to get to where we are even beyond all of these labels. And there's just like
Unity.
unity of consciousness and of goodness. And there is utility to positions like priesthood and judges, but that's not coming from the fact that those people are your savior. They're not your savior. God is your savior. They're just they have a job. It's a job. Like someone's job is to plant the field, another person's job is to execute murderers. Like that's just what it takes, or to do temple sacrifices. By the way, Messiah just means anointed. The high priest is anointed. Does it mean now he's some God savior? No, he's just anointed because he has a special role to play in the temple, offering sacrifices to God. So it's like the whole notion. And by the way, Maimonides, who's just worshipped by every sect of Jews, has a list of 13 principles of faith. Which, by the way, apparently the Ten Commandments didn't cut it for him, so he had to make his own.
And three additional.
Yeah, well, also the first 10 are not the Ten Commandments,
Yeah.
but the last two are: I believe in the Messiah and I believe in the resurrection of the dead. Like, if you don't believe that, you're not a Jew.
Oh my God.
You kidding me? Right? It's like it's all propaganda. It's all man-made ideologies, man-made law, and what we're looking at is a religion that claims to be the religion of the Torah, yet it is completely removed from the original text, incorporating tons and tons of their own ideologies, their own viewpoints, their own interpretations, their own laws. And yeah, no thank you. That's not the religion of God. That's the religion of man. And they are using the authority of God to put it on you and say that if you don't follow them, you're not following God. And that's a very crafty and cunning trick. And I feel very badly for people that are under that spell. But I would encourage you to get out of it, because those things are ruining people's lives.
Absolutely. There was I watched one of your podcasts recently. I forgot which one it was, and I actually wanted your take with something else added into the mix. So the Kerites also honor the Tanakh, right, which is just the combination of the Torah and all the other stories attached to the Bible, except the New Testament. So there's a story in Joshua, like right from the start after Moses, where he executes a family for the sin of one man,
Yeah.
right, which is against Torah law.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, you've already established your stance, which is the Torah acts as its own law, and everything outside of the Torah is questionable and not really applicable at all. However, the history still stands. Like it seems like God is on his side based
Yeah,
off of
because
the
the plague
actions
stops.
afterwards.
The
Yeah,
plague
the
stops
plague
once he
stops
kills
once
them.
he kills him.
Yeah.
So if you know this, like, what do the Kerites make out of it, and what do you make out of that?
I mean, look, I'm not Joshua, so Joshua had a lot more divine inspiration than I
Mm-hmm.
do. Where I stand, you cannot make judgments like that, you know? And like we're talking about a time where there was extreme presence of God and some dramatic act was necessary in order to stifle the plague, which was destroying the people. And plus, they were losing the war, right? And so there was so much at stake. At the same time, though, you can't just take that as precedent to start making up
Mm-hmm.
whatever laws you want. So I think protecting human life is going to be the better way to go. And I even think this approach should apply to the Palestinians. Like what's going on in
Mm-hmm.
Israel. Like there's so little care for the Palestinians' lives, just because why? Just because like you're a Jew and you own this land. Like that's not how this works. They're human beings. They've been
Mm-hmm.
living there for 2,000 years. And by the way, I understand they're very difficult to deal with because they're quite a
Just
violent
like the
bunch.
Jews
Just
were difficult to deal with.
yeah, all the Jews are extremely difficult to deal with, and they're dealing with Palestinians who are quite a violent bunch and don't want them there. So there's going to they need to come to some agreement on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the lack of care for human life is never okay. It's just never okay, and God literally says, "Do not murder." So
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a justification. I really don't see a justification for what Joshua did, other than the fact that it seemed that God let it pass and was like, "Okay, this is going to work as a sacrifice."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just wouldn't extrapolate that as precedent to then reenact something of the like, because it's so extreme to kill children for their father's sin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Torah itself says not to do that. Fathers
Mm-hmm.
should not die for the sins of their sons should not die for the sins of their fathers. Like it's not the correct way to do law. So I don't know exactly what was motivating Joshua, and clearly that worked in the moment. I mean, you even see something like that with David, where the guy comes to him and says, "I saw Saul," because you know how Saul tried to kill himself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and he fell on his sword, and then he was about to die, but the the Philistines were coming and they were about to get him,
Yeah, yeah.
and so he calls out to this Amalekite
Mm-hmm.
convert or something, and he's like, "Come kill me so that I don't
Yeah.
get killed by them," and he went and killed
Mm-hmm.
Saul, and David said, "How dare you,
Mm-hmm.
like raise your hand to the anointed
Murder.
one of
Yeah.
God," and he killed him, but like he didn't even do it because he doesn't say you were a murderer. He said like,
Mm-hmm.
"How dare you raise your hand to the anointed one of
Yeah.
God," right? So
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
this like treason. He's the
Yeah. Yeah.
king. It was kind of it wasn't a Torah judgment. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a king's honor
Yeah. Yeah.
judgment. And again, I don't know where these things come from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I don't think that we're accountable to the actions of people. We're accountable to the laws of God. And so, God gives power to prophets and kings to do things,
Mm-hmm.
but not everything they do is right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all
Yeah.
we have is God's law.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point about the Palestinians because it gives that new perspective. Whereas Jewish people, before they had land, were always the outsiders that were the tough ones to deal with because they have this like weird elite system where they keep to themselves. They also like do sacrifices, and they don't respect in their eyes they don't respect their gods, right? So there's this like issue to deal with, the problem to deal with, right? So in this sense, Israel occupies that territory, and now they have to deal with the Gaza or the people who in Gaza and the Palestinians there. I mean, ideally, what they do is learn from their past, not treat them like they were treated, and just establish rule.
Mm.
They just take over Gaza, and they take it over. They execute and cast judgment on those who are murderers and going against them, but everyone else just like use them as conspirators or like CIA agents to like
Mm.
give away the terrorists that are in that region.
Yeah. Instead, what they've done is they've leveled the entire city displaced every single person who lives there. 2 million people. They've destroyed all of their homes. They've wiped everything to the floor. These people are starving. They have no homes. They're actually in the process of removing them. Like, even Trump was like, yeah, we should just like get them out of there, right? So they just basically want to get them out of the land and take it over, and they're in the process of doing that. And like, how do you dispossess 2 million people without causing immense suffering and starvation and death, right? And like, it just it's very harmful, and I'm sick and tired of having to defend Israel for doing bullshit. Like,
No,
they're not acting with the compassion that is expected of them, and they're like, oh, why do you hold us to a higher account? I don't know, maybe because you're the Jewish people.
Oh yeah.
Like, maybe because you yourself walk around moralizing and pretending like you're the people of God. Well, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that you just get rid of all the people who were living in the land before you? Like, that's not.
No.
And remember, there are innocent civilians. They're not Hamas. Little babies are not Hamas. Women and children, they're not Hamas. Even most of the men are not Hamas. So like, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. And the world is infuriated.
And on top of that, not that they're even organized. They use that excuse as to say like, oh, we don't know where they are, so we just like get pieces of information and we execute based off of that. It's like, why not just fucking like go boots to the ground and march in? March in, take over the first building, and do that one by one, by one.
No, they if anything, they've avoided boots on the ground, even though they actually have the military power, and they've just dropped bombs and bombs and bombs and have leveled the entire city to the point where there's no standing building left. They just bombed a church the other day.
No, what's interesting is that I was actually watching a video on Napoleon, and it's describing his conquest of like South Africa and like up to Israel as well. And what's interesting is that whenever he took over these places, right, he went by boat and he came into the city. He fought the people who were fighting against him, and then the rest of the people, he just like said, "We rule now. Like, you respond to us. We're not going to persecute you. We're just like, we govern you now."
Right? By the way, that's the Torah's law. You know that. It says in the Torah, when you come to conquer a land, you call out in peace. And if they don't respond in peace, you enter and you only kill the male combatants. You let the women and children live, and you establish your rule over the land. Now, again, there's a tension here because the claim is that the Palestinians want a state, right? And
but like who? That's just on social media.
Well, exactly. Who are the Palestinians exactly?
Everybody wants a state. Israel wants a state. That doesn't matter. You still abide by God's commandments.
Yeah. No, 100%. And again, I would support Israel conquering the land if Israel was actually a biblical Israel. By the way, a biblical Israel allows for non-Jews to live there. By the way, at this point, this is what's so funny, is that the Jews have been so assimilated across the entire world that there isn't even any Jew who has pure blood from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Oh, not at all.
It's some kind of joke. Like, these people, I wonder why Jews from Europe are white and Jews from Syria are brown, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right?
I wonder why there are Jews in Mexico today.
How in the world, clearly these people have been assimilated for thousands of years in whatever culture they've lived in, and they're trying to hide it because they're like, I'm a Jew. No, that's not how this works. We're all human beings. And honestly, the nation of Israel are the people who want to live by those laws.
Yep.
Otherwise, what does it mean to be an Israelite? It has no definition.
What's interesting is that Hitler and his government, what they were doing when they were trying to identify all the Jews is actually making every person prepare documents proving that their past three descendants were not Jewish and German. So you had to have like official files, and each person one by one was proving their genealogy, and that's how they identified Jews, and they would establish you either as German or a Jew based off of that. I mean,
but remember, if you had a three-generation convert, you had a three-generation convert. Now they're a Jew on the record, right? So that's how this works. Being a Jew is just someone who proclaims themselves, I am a Jew, I am under this label, I am bound by these laws.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're a Jew, and within a couple generations, you're completely assimilated into the people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now there's you really no way to differentiate.
Yeah, yeah. But either way, like I think what's difficult is if you look at the history of the Jews, even in the Tanakh, there were Jews like the prophets Jeremiah that still abided by the Jewish law during that time, even though it was completely corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a certain empathy towards people who follow the laws in place because you want to protect yourself, choose life always,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Israel is acting like that right now. Like whether or not they actually label themselves as a God-fearing society, they have control over Israel and they have certain laws, and the very people that live there should be calling them out every single day, just
Yeah,
like the prophets have.
of course. Except the people who live there are either secularists
Mm-hmm.
or Orthodox Jews, and neither of those extremes represent the Torah. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like Orthodox Jews are Jewish supremacists,
Mm-hmm.
and they're actually the powerful ones in the government right now. Netanyahu's government is very much backed by the Orthodox Jews, and they're Jewish supremacists who walk around saying a good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian, and they're just, again, it's part of their insane mindset,
Mm-hmm.
which is Talmudic in nature, the dehumanization of non-Jews and the lack of care for human life when it's not a Jew. That's an Orthodox Jewish
Mm-hmm.
stance, and it's despicable.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean,
Well,
we're here to create a much more correct understanding of the Torah, a humanized version of it, which is what the Torah actually is.
mm-hmm.
Of course, it starts off with a human story, and then the revelation to Israel is not confined only to Israel. It's a revelation for the world, and everyone can learn from it.
Yeah, no. I think everything we're doing right now is actually in, there's a bigger picture in mind. Like, how awesome would it be to live in a world where you're able to support a system that includes everyone, and you're able to bring God's commandments to the entire people, building
Mm.
such a huge community, such a huge movement to remind people of the Torah and God's original revelation, and discard all the surrounding beliefs on how the Torah has progressed and changed over time just to fit our needs and wants. So that's something we are pursuing at the moment, and it's really, you want to continue, finish it off?
Okay, I mean, I'll just let you know that me and Chris partnered in this endeavor. Both of us are bringing to bear our abilities to really bring this message to the world because we need to do this. You know, like it just there hasn't been a clarity in the Torah for all of Jewish history, and it's really unfortunate, and it's contributed to the downfall of the Jewish people by the very admission of the text. The Jewish people's downfall is when they don't follow the Torah, and in the broader context of humanity, humanity's downfall is when they don't follow God's commandments. And we have the solution. So if we have the solution, we need to share it, and we need to share it with each other because we're all on the same boat and we're all part of this collective reality of individuals and families, that if individuals and families return to God on a big enough scale, we're looking at a collective redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And the Torah is the key. It just is. And it sounds oversimplified. It sounds too good to be true. But when you actually study it and you see that it weighs in on every important moral issue with clarity, with forcefulness, by the way, the force that's required in order to actually carry out these laws, there's some sort of delusion in people's minds that you don't need force to make things happen. Of course you do. That's how everything happens. How does the government have power? It's because they threaten you with force. They
Mm-hmm.
tell you if you don't listen to us, go to prison. Or this is going to happen to you, right? Force is what keeps things in play. That's the masculine order, the power.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, what is worthy of force?
Well, what's even more divine to that is rather than pursuing this for the sake of redemption, we're pursuing it for the promised result, which is all the blessings that God has listed to give to us if we just follow his commandments.
Yeah, and who doesn't want a blessed life? I mean, that is the promise. And if God makes a promise, he will keep it. And if you wonder why we haven't seen the blessed life, maybe we should look at our actions and see how they've not at all reflected God's will. And so, if we work to fulfill God's will, then we actually will achieve this promise, and we'll achieve a land where we can live like the days of heaven on earth. We'll have abundant crops and abundant livestock and wealth and health and family and peace and love and unity and all of these things that we know are right at the heart of what life is about, yet they seem so far away sometimes. God is the answer. You know, God is the one who strikes the blow. God is the one who provides the healing. And we need God's healing. We need God's salvation. And it is very much dependent on what we do with our actions. As he told Cain, if you improve yourself, you will be uplifted. Our self-improvement is the road to our redemption. And if we don't have that, we're just going to end up in a constant state of curse, really, the opposite of blessing.
So what we've done is we've partnered, and currently what we're offering is a service in which Israel will work with you one-on-one to create a customized program to help you in your study, whether that be in the realm of history, whether it be in psychology or exploration of the faith. All of those things are going to be rooted within the Torah. And that's the angle in which we're going to be presenting our service to you. So that's the initial service at the moment. And we're currently looking for people and we're organically reaching out. However, the bigger mission of what we're trying to pursue is to actually build a congregation, establish a new movement. And it's not new because we're just returning to the original faith, the Torah. And we want to push that. It is not our words. We just want to have some sort of financial backing. So we do take donations at the moment. We do provide services, of course, for a cost. And ideally, if the donations exceed the services, we'll just feed it back into the community. And we'll create the new church. We'll create all sorts of organized campaigns in order to help individuals, whether that be giving charity to those in needs, providing education to those who have none, providing food, water, and whatever ends up being, right? And we want to create a safe space, a foundation, and you know what? Let our aspirations be huge. Why not aim to take over the world and establish God's law within the Torah?
Amen. I mean, yeah, we just want to be of service. And that's, as we spoke about, to be a servant of God is the greatest accomplishment, the greatest joy. And we want to share the realizations that we've had with others and build a community of like-minded people. And a community of God supports each other. And you help out those who are less fortunate. You support the priest, and the priest supports the people spiritually. And then there's just a unity and an engagement with each other that is perfect and beautiful, where no one goes hungry, no one is left behind, everyone is cared for. And that's our vision, and we want to share that with you. If you are looking for further education in the Torah, we are here, and we want to share. And
Sure. Yeah, there's two things. If you want to engage in that program that we're offering, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to join our free weekly Zoom meeting that Israel already hosts and has a pretty good community on, please do. We answer questions. We want dialogue, so you're more than welcome to engage.
yeah, click in the link below in the description. There's links for
Yeah.
contact, for donation,
Or DM.
and DM on social media, and email. And we're available. We're here, and we want to help.
We're willing.
We're willing.
Amen. It's
Amen.
new beginnings.
All right.
Right,
Thank you,
Shirley.
Chris.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
God bless.